Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of Leadership Stories brought to you by Inroads Leadership Development. Today, we have a very interesting guest. Her name is Soundari Mukherjee, and let me introduce her. She is the founding partner of TSOL, a leadership consulting firm focused on business storytelling, future-ready skills, behavior, attitude, and mindset transformations. She's worked for over 20 years in the areas of finance, operations, banking, and entrepreneurship with Unilever, ANZ, and now TSOL. Soundari has an insider's view on the challenges that organizations and teams face, and this drives her passion while working on various consulting and capability building projects. So Soundari and I met in a very interesting manner. Both of us are mentors on one of the platforms. And of course, then we realized that we have another common factor, which is ANZ. In my conversations, we were wondering what we should be talking about. And we decided that today is going to be a day of storytelling. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. So let's move on. Soundari, would you like to quickly introduce yourselves and then tell us about this key leadership skill that everybody talks about in today's age, which is storytelling? And why is it such an important leadership skill?
Yeah. I think I'll just go with your introduction. So I'll jump right in. Definitely, I think we have a lot of commonalities. So if we do a Venn diagram, the intersection points are more, and I'm really happy about that, Neerja. So thanks, Neerja, and thanks, Suman and Veena, for this opportunity. And it's always a pleasure chatting with you. So storytelling in business is a powerful and systematic tool which can be used in a variety of situations to deliver business outcomes. And it is a human skill. And especially in these days where we say it's like all about 3 C's: communicate, communicate, and communicate, right? And personally, I've seen this play out. So on a long day of work, after, living on Zoom as we are all doing now, I shut my laptop and decided to go for a walk. My eyes by then were like pixelated like the Zoom screen. I was walking along the road that I live on, and I've lived in the same place for 14 years. So it just gives that sense of familiarity, as if you know everybody on the street kind of thing. And I saw this friend walking across from the other side of the road. And I smiled at him, and he walked right past. I was taken aback and I said, okay, maybe he's preoccupied. It's COVID times, right? Everybody's like really got a lot going on in their head. And I continued walking, and maybe after about 100 meters, it struck me that it was because I was wearing a mask. And he didn't probably recognize me, or obviously he couldn't see my smile. And maybe he smiled back. And I didn't notice a smile either. And this made me realize that we are so reliant on our body language to convey our emotions. And now, in this masked existence, we need to find verbal ways to engage better. And what better way than stories that we tell to create that connection? So our focus has been on the business storytelling space, mostly on verbal storytelling, though of late, of course, we've been using it in the written communication piece as well. Why is this becoming even more relevant now? And there's definitely a sudden spate of conversation around storytelling that we hear. And I think that's for a few reasons. One is on the social side, the complexity of messaging, and with the technology change, with so many acronyms coming up, so many words. And I was just reading the other day that just I think a couple of days back, Oxford Dictionary has come up and said that there is no one defining word to represent 2020. We've heard right from unprecedented, easy words like that to doom scrolling, to flattening the curve, to follow some of the words which are already there, but we've seen so much of these being used now. And that has made things pretty complicated in a messaging point of view. And to this, you add our own attention deficit. The average person probably nowadays looks at a device 300 times a day. And that's a lot of information overload. Then we have this problem of very choice rich environment. Today, if you and I want to watch a show together, we can say, do we want to watch it on Netflix? Is it on Amazon Prime? Is it on Apple TV? Is it our regular TV show? I mean, it's just really maddening, right? So one way to cut across all this noise is to tell a story. When you tell a story, normally we end up using non-jargon language. We use very simple words like, how I met and where we saw. It's all really simple. And while facts and data connect to our head, stories connect to our heart. And they fire up that curiosity to get you to listen. When you say A and Z, so I'm gonna, oh, which year did you work? What happened there? It brings in that natural curiosity from us. And this is just the social side of it. You link this to the current reality at work. One evening, I caught up with a friend of mine who was returning from his company town hall. And I said, hey, tell me what's the dope from your organization? What's the inside information kind of thing? And he said, nothing much. I said, what are you saying? Your CEO is like doing round the world tour and he's presenting to all of you. There must be something interesting. Tell me about it. And he says, no, just a lot of data, how we are doing now, how we'll do later. And that also got me thinking that a lot of time and effort and money gets invested in getting these decks together. Communication and marketing departments run around this. And there is this friend of mine who's saying it's not even memorable. He can't even remember. And then we talk to clients and they're saying leaders are not inspiring. We just can't connect. We can't relate. Our sales teams are talking like, they're like talking brochures. Our technology teams are amazing. They're like, cutting edge, but they can't communicate. We have our values written on the wall. God knows what it means when it's translated into work. And with your nod, I know that you've seen this happen, right, at work. And I was listening to this podcast by John Flint, who's the past CEO of HSBC Group. And he says that in his 30-year career, he's done loads of PowerPoint presentations, about 1 million slides. And nobody remembers those. But in his 30-year career, before he moved out last year in August 2019, he has told a lot of stories along the way. Personal stories, about high points, about low points, about success, failure, and people are still talking about those. So at TESOL, we really want to look at that big, hairy, audacious goal of bringing that kind of humanity to the workplace. So it's not a vendetta against bullet points or PowerPoints. We're just saying, can you embellish them with examples? So you create a messaging that's sticky. Stories are facts, which are wrapped in context and which are delivered with emotion. Facts because we believe that it has to be real incidents. It's not example. It's not like Hollywood, Bollywood kind of storytelling. It's not made up. It's not fictional. Context. So it's relatable to your audience. Who are you speaking to and why should they listen to you? And emotion, because that's the ultimate connector, right? I think it was Donald Kahn who said the essential difference between emotion and reason is that emotion leads to action, whereas reason only leads to conclusions. And you want to get to that action point. And that's why I think both from a social side, a human side, and a business side, stories are like really, really important way to connect, engage, inspire, and influence action.
That was wonderful, Sundari. And in this, you have narrated so many stories. And I think, we've proven the point that if you had just told us about the how and the why and the what in the usual language, it wouldn't have, hit us that hard as against the stories that you have narrated, through this introduction to this beautiful tool. And I just loved it.
Thank you.
So, are there any specific situations where a leader can use storytelling as a tool?
Absolutely. I mean, stories are a valuable business tool, right? You just need to know how to use them. And in business, the storytelling part of it has to be really seamless. You don't go about saying, I'm going to tell you a story. That's probably something that will, push back people, right? Oh, you're going to tell something which is made up, kahani suna rahe ho kind of thing. You don't want to get into that space. So any place where you want to make a point, you can use an example to make that point. And by doing that, you will make it more memorable, more impactful. So in fact, in a business context, you use stories only to make a point. Otherwise, you might as well be sitting in a bar with a friend and talking, which is gupshup as we know it. And in business, it also needs to be short. It's not just the attention deficit and information overload. It's like, really cut to the chase kind of storytelling. So we look at it in a few lenses on why are we using this example, this anecdote, in what context are we saying it, and what is the point that we want to make. So really framing our thinking around that. So let's look at some of the traits which are coming under the spotlight now. Things like trust, innovative mindset, how important it is to go local or speed of response, looking at really quick speed, resilience, and things like that. So let's start with trust. Trust is something we all know is important for building connections. So as it said, if people like you, they will listen to you. If they trust you, they'll do business with you. So how do you communicate what is trust and what is building trust? So PC Mustafa, he's the CEO and co-founder of ID Fresh Foods, our Idli Dosa batter company. In 2016, they ran a campaign called ID Trust Shops. So they installed refrigerated chillers inside apartments, office complexes, and they let people pick up any ID product that they wanted and pay for it by dropping cash inside a box which was just kept next to the chiller. No CCTV cameras, no security guards to monitor. So when the idea was floated, everybody mocked. But Mustafa was very clear that they needed to go ahead. He said, I know it's in India, but I strongly believe that if we want our customers to trust us, we need to trust them first. Fresh food is all about trust, right? Otherwise, people assume you're putting preservatives, you're putting things to in that product. So he talks about one particular trust shop in Chennai where a customer regularly used to come, pick up a product and drop monopoly money. At one point of time, they thought, let's just withdraw this refrigerator from this complex. But said, that is not true to what we are speaking as our mission. Let's not do that. Let's just keep it in. And after many weeks, one day, the same customer dropped off a 500 rupee note. And that made his day. And what mattered to him was not the fact that the customer paid, but he finally realized the value of trust. So if Mustafa wanted to just, tell his team that it's very important that we trust our clients and you have to understand the value of trust, it would have been like, eyes glazing over. Yeah, whatever, as our kids tend to say. But now you will remember this example, and he also created very powerfully what his brand stands for. It's all about building trust. Our customers can trust us and we deliver trustworthy products. So that's one area where you can bring in, really an example to make the point instead of just saying, trust us. Another place we were talking about is around innovation. We use words like we have to use out of the box thinking. How do you listen to your customer? How do you make it organization customer centric? How do you cultivate curiosity? These are just words, how do we even reinforce this? And Hire is a group which is a Chinese multinational home appliances and consumer electronics company. It's headquartered in Qingdao in China. And about 20 years back, a farmer dialed into Hire's call center, complaining that his washing machine was not functioning properly. It was full of dirt. So the technician calls a call center, is called, and the technician goes to the customer's house, and he discovers that the dirt which is there in the washing machine was not from the clothes that the farmer wore to the field to harvest his potatoes, but from the potatoes themselves. The farmer was washing not just his clothes, he was using the washing machine to wash his potatoes as well. So the technician is like, okay. He calls a repairman. A repairman comes, fixes the problem, replaces a larger drainage pipe there for that outlet and for all the dirt to go out. Now, this could have stopped just there. When Rumen Zhang, the CEO of the company, he heard the news, he was as shocked as we all are. But he soon realized that this could be a big business opportunity. He was looking at how do I build my rural base, rural consumer base for my company. So he decided to invest in development of a washing machine, which would have a big draining outlet. So that could wash clothes. It could wash your vegetables as well. And the new model, which was called XP B40DS, was like sent out. They did a small batch. They did a test batch of about 10,000 units and put the pricing at about equivalent of INR 10,000 rupees. And he targeted it at the rural areas, and it was a big sellout. So here you are faced with a customer complaint. You have a technician who's gone. He's resolved the problem. He put a big drainage pipe and he came out. You can just say that farmer is like, he's crazy and leave it at that. But how do you use this situation? And similarly, what can be that potato machine moment for us as an organization? So if you want to communicate about, how do you become innovative? How do you listen to your clients and how do you respond? This could be a great example. Instead of just saying that, we need to be customer centric, we need to be innovative, and so on. There are enough and more such. Yeah, please.
Right. I was saying, as you're speaking about these two, I could think of so many more, right? And I think there is a story for everything. It's just about ensuring that we have it all stacked up somewhere here. Of course, if there is an opportunity to prepare, then we prepare with the stories and go. But definitely, it also needs to be here so that we can pull out based on the situation. While we started talking about, and we are talking about leadership stories, but of course, everyone is a leader today. You can't really say that someone with X number of years of experience or in a particular position in the hierarchy is a leader. I believe everyone is a leader in his or her own way. But given the context that we all play different roles, and age could be an aspect to that also. Is storytelling relevant only for leaders, or do you believe that it is an important tool for everyone, be it a student, a new joinee, an individual contributor in an organization?
No, totally. I mean, you hit the nail on the head on that. It is a leadership skill, we say, only because there's a lot of experiential storytelling that happens. So sort of we tend to link it up to a leadership position because of that experience. But storytelling is for everyone. All of us need to connect. All of us need to influence. And in fact, when you're not a senior leader, you probably need to influence when you even don't have authority over the context, right? And that makes it even more powerful to use stories. So for instance, in an interview situation, and that's something for all the students who are aligned to this, is how do you say that you've been adaptable in the current times? So the way is not to say, oh, I've been adaptable, it's important to be adaptable. It's to really think back to a time when you were asked to do something that you've never done before? How did you react? What did you learn from it? What did you feel during the process? And how did you overcome that to get where you are? So that's something a student can absolutely relate to and get going. And we are both mentors. You've like, you're dealing with your organization and also with mentorship, lots of mentorships. And this is something that we tell a lot of our mentees and students, right? It's very important to ask for help. And that is an art by itself in some ways. So in the early 90s, during my days with ANZ, I had to deal with a conflict between maintaining a relationship with a client and following some of the credit norms and risk practices which were there at the bank. So when I talked to the credit team, my initial path was to believe that we couldn't organize those lines of credit for this particular client because this client profile was like risky. And I will just leave it at that. So I ended up stewing over this problem by myself, not reaching out to the client or my work colleagues. And I tried to look at possible options. But all that happened was I lost a lot of sleep over the couple of weeks. I was just having all these conversations in my head, which was useful as it was to think of options. It was not providing outcomes. Eventually, when I reached out back to the credit team, everyone there geared up actually to make the transaction work within the stated guidelines. And I still remember the look on the client's face who had just about given up on me and my branch when I told him, oh, you know what, we are able to go ahead with the funding and this is how we can structure it. So it was an aha moment for me to learn to take help from the ecosystem and not try solving everything by yourself. And this is something that I urge everyone, students, new joinees, business leaders, business women, to really create your own personal board of directors within and outside your organization. So you can reach out and really hear views, which you can't sort out for yourself. And like the company, I think it's reminding me as I'm speaking, it's my WD-40, the company. So WD stands for water displacement, and the 40 in the name, in the brand name, stands for 40th formula. So which means 39 formulas obviously didn't work till they came up with that 40th one. So I chalk up this thing for me as well as a learning moment. How do you learn to ask for help? And that is something that stayed with me. So if you're a mentor, share an example from your experience, then you're role modeling it right there on, how you're doing it. And we are in platforms where we are seeing this, right?
Definitely, definitely. And yeah, I agree with that bit about asking for help. And so much so, not only about the younger generation, I think many of the women, I think, kind of cringe asking for help in every way, whether it be at home or outside. And narrating a story like this will definitely kind of pass the message. You don't even have to say, go ask for help. It is showcasing the fact that by asking for help, nothing went wrong. Actually, there was only positive, outcomes that happened. And people kind of will get the message. And that's the beauty of, storytelling, be it to whoever the audience and whoever be the individual who's narrating the story. Definitely wonderful. Now, let me ask you, you've already narrated many of your stories, but is there one really powerful story that you have heard which has made an impact or transformed your thinking and action?
Oh, so this is one that I'm going to be really struggling for. It's a tough one.
To pick from so many that you have heard.
It's all context as well, right? No, just knowing so many of these stories has changed my way of thinking. It's driven me to become more creative, think about something else. And sometimes it's something very small that connects to you. It could just be an analogy that you read somewhere which says, I get that kind of thing. So there's this columnist here in Hong Kong called David Dodwell, and he writes in South China Morning Post, which is the newspaper here. And he was talking about this whole living on Zoom and virtual everything. And he said, I may have no choice, I'm doing this, but I will never love it. And he connected it to saying that it's like the stuff astronauts eat when they're floating for 6 months in the International Space Station. It provides essential nutrition, but let's not pretend it's real food. So sometimes it's something as small as that, which when I read it, I said, wow, I get it. It's exactly that, it's not, it is building connections. We're all, obviously learning to work and weave our magic on Zoom as we are trying now, but we miss the personal contact, connect.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, it's also about stories which are linked to empathy. We are talking about, moving from output to outcomes. How do you create those human-centric designs? How do you create products? Not just because you want to add more features to it, but what is the core purpose of the product? And to that extent, sometimes, as we say, less is more. So I heard this in a podcast, and it's also quoted in a book, which is Smart Cards by Shane Snow. So it's about Jane Chen and her team at Stanford University. It's a department called Design for Extreme Poverty. So every year, about 20 million premature babies are born. And most are born in obviously developing countries. Millions of these babies don't even make it through their first year. So in first world countries, you would typically have access to glass box incubators with built-in life support monitors, features. And these incubators could cost anything like $20,000, which is like what, 15 lakh rupees? So which is not great if you are living on less than $1 a day. Obviously you don't have access to this. So in 2008, Jane and her team, Linus Liang, Nag Murthy, and Rahul Panikar, they decided to focus what is that one essential feature that will make the biggest difference to keeping a baby warm. And that's the purpose of it, right? When you have a preemie baby, you want to keep the baby warm. So they created a sleeping bag with a pouch, and that pouch had a hot pad, which could be reheated. Easy, simple to use. Even for mothers who had no education, you just take the heat pad, you can reheat it, you put it back. And the cost of this bag, they called it Embrace. The cost of this bag came down to $25, which is like 1,800 rupees. And they designed this in 2008, and the company was formed in 2010. And not only did it win design awards, it's also been saving thousands of babies from what would have been, because of unaffordability, what would have been near death. So next time when we talk to product teams, when you want to say improve a product, add more features, like how we see with iPhone and all every day, what are the features? What else? What else? What else? It's not about what else. It's literally like a sculptor chipping away and arriving at the core of what is important. You find that, gem within that, creating something which is just features which are just essential and necessary. So focusing on that. And this really absolutely connects with me. And I use this a lot.
So that's another story which connected with me, Saundari. Maybe you don't know, Sneha is premature, my daughter.
Oh my God.
It's such a fantastic thing, and I go back to how it connects and how it will be the aha moment and how one can really take back those actionable insights, which is what we want at the end of it, right? The stories are, of course, entertaining, always will leave a message, but those actionable insights, I think, are so much more powerful when you actually narrate a story. It will definitely, kind of touch a chord in many of the people who are listening to it. So the last question, if I may ask, how does one perfect the art of storytelling?
I think we are all learners here. So it's looking for perfection is not really the thing, but definitely, I think any story which has a lot of moments where you can picture ourselves, like put ourselves in that story, that's a great story. That's something that really connects to us. And all of us, I think, first belief is around the fact that all of us are storytellers. As a human, this is what we organically do. Only when we come to work, sometimes we seem to leave that aside. So, how can we really bring that organically at work as well? And that is a science. It's not an art in some ways because it can be practiced. So, when we do storytelling, we run sessions where we talk about structures. So, you talk about story structures and use those structures, and that really helps you communicate in a certain format. And that is something that can be learned. So, it can be taught and it can be learned. And I think it's really important, so just a few thoughts and tips in that sense. Very important to know why you're telling the story. What is the point that you want to make? Like this thing on Jane Chen and the embrace bag, we can use it in a lot of different situations, right? When you want to talk about how to think about innovation, when you want to talk about features, when you want to talk about how do you really make design human centric, look at your target audience and how do you design for a target audience. So you can use it in a lot of different contexts, but when you're narrating the story, it's important to know why you're telling it, so you're able to land the story very sharp. What is the audience will take away from it? Else we'll just meander through all this. The other important point is to keep the story real. In business, we are talking about real incidents. We are not talking about, like I said, Bollywood, Hollywood style storytelling. When did it happen? When you bring in specifics into your story, when you put a time, you put a place, you name the characters, you talk about the conversations, you add the emotions, you add the imagery, that makes it very real. And when I say emotions, it's like emotions, but not getting emotional. It's like talking about your feelings. And it's also not adding that storytelling voice. It's not about performance. We are not getting into theater here. We are at work. We want to talk, to communicate, to make a point, drive outcomes. So keeping that focus in mind, definitely keeping it short. Imagine that if you're telling a story to your CEO and your CEO is in a rush. So a conversation with the CEO is already, something which is a high stake conversation. You're already in a spot there. So really keeping it short and to make that point. Having a variety of stories. You don't want to be a one story wonder. And some people are comfortable sharing personal stories. I think I'm happy doing it, but some people may not be. So there are other kinds of stories where you want to avoid getting personal. So just for example, in a sales situation, if you're talking to a client, you don't need to necessarily only talk about your personal sales experience. You can talk about a story of a client and what is the delight they derived from your product. You can talk about how a product was invented. So the insight that led to the product invention. And definitely you can talk about failures, how things went wrong and how you turned it around, hopefully. So I think one of those things is that stories are there everywhere. Reading a lot, listening to podcasts, you can see them everywhere. I was reading Economist the other day, and there was this talk about this Nordic asset management company. And they talked about, our asset policy, management policy is as steady as Bjorn Borg serving from the baseline. And it's a tennis analogy, but sometimes even that little movement connects to saying that, oh, what they mean is it's a very defensive strategy and like playing from the baseline and not going up to the net and playing. So you get it. There are these small things that will connect. And this, once you start seeing, you see them everywhere. But just like rainwater, and I think I'm just scarred by my experience of growing up in Chennai, where water was scarce. There were no cyclones. So we used to have this thing called rainwater harvesting. which was there in a lot of the buildings so that the water doesn't go off in the pipes and drown on the ground. You're able to collect it and harvest it. Like that, stories are, you need a place to park them. And I find that definitely for me, memory is a really big problem. So if I have to remember, so I use Evernote, I use sticky notes, I use notes on the computer. So it's all over the place, but some organized way of keeping it together. Some people like to just keep it on Excel. Doesn't matter. It's just mean, but somewhere where you can park it and tag it. So when you want to prepare, say for a client conversation where you want to make a point and it's a crucial conversation, right? So you think back, okay, what can I tell them? What is it that I can, refer back to make that point? So listen, read, collect, and being inquisitive, asking those questions. When you talked about this, I'm like, so what happened next? How do you really lead to that discovery phase and then sense making phase? And most important, practice. I play tennis, and I started playing very late in life, in my 40s. But I was very fond of sports. I used to play table tennis, and I got into tennis because after watching the game for so many years from childhood, I said I must play. And as I'm playing, I can watch a lot of YouTube videos these days, right? How to perfect your forehand, how to perfect your backhand. You can see lots of things, but that's not going to help. I need to really go there and play it out. And while I'm doing it, what is really helpful is to have a coach. Because I will be again, repeating the same thing in the same way. It's not going to cause that incremental change in the action. You need a coach who can tell you, oh, just turn your body slightly this way. And you need an open stance for your forehand, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So for storytelling, it's great to have a coach who can also point out the nuances to you. So I'm much better because of those coaching, not just by watching people play, as much joyful as it is. So it's like, I think ultimately it's just about practicing, finding a buddy, finding somebody, and just trying it out and refining it as we go along.
Sure. So it's like any other, technique or tool that one might want to pick up. There is a lot of preparation. It's not that while we do, listen to people on the stage and it feels that, wow, he or she's a natural and, continuously is telling us stories. Behind that is that huge list that the person has actually curated and thought about, where can I use this story? When can I use this story? And prepares for a specific, audience and a specific topic that he or she is going to be delivering it on. And of course, over a period of time, you will get better and can become a little natural because you have that stored here. It could probably just come back.
It is absolutely about being deliberate and intentional, like anything else. Anything that you want to learn, nobody became an expert in a day. True. And you probably never become an expert. I don't think becoming an expert is an outcome. Yeah. It is, am I really connecting better? Am I influencing action better? So it's not to become the J.K. Rowlings of the world or, the orators of the world or performance artists. It's definitely trying to use it in a business context.
Thank you so much, Soundari, for bringing this up. And, it's a lot of, what must I say? While I do attempt storytelling, a lot of my talks and a lot of my writings, I try and bring in stories, but I try and bring in from my own personal lives. Because I haven't really created a repository of other stories, but I will definitely make an attempt for that. But it definitely is relevant in today's day and age. And to all our viewers, I think this is something that you must pick up regardless of what role you are in. It helps both in personal as well as in your professional, side of things. And we brought you, Soundari, all the way from Hong Kong. And that's one good thing that has happened because of the pandemic, that we can really reach out to people far and wide and make them available at your doorstep, or should I say windows. So thank you. And till the next episode of Leadership Stories, Please do enjoy and practice storytelling. It is an art and a science, as Soundari said. Thank you, Soundari.
Thank you so much, Neera. As always, I enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.